wanted to talk a little bit about Measure H. Actually, I want to talk a lot about Measure H. For those of you who don't remember, this was a special election conducted on March the 7th, where there was only one initiative on the ballot. It added a quarter-cent sales tax for 10 years, required a 2/3 majority, and passed by a margin of 67%. It's going to collect $355 million a year for a total of $3.5 billion. To me, that's a lot of money. The LA population is approximately 9,818,000. So if you do the math and you have average population around the county, the city of Santa Clarita will be donating $7.8 million a year toward this amount in sales tax. And just to give you an idea how much that is, that would be enough money to build a $30 million homeless shelter and operate it with $4.8 million for 10 years. Now, who does this hurt most? All these taxes normally hurt the seniors living on fixed incomes and residents and seniors living on a tight budget because, excuse me, many of them are just a short step away from homeless themselves. And I was at another meeting early this week, and I heard this individual tell us the story about that her Social Security income that she lives on is $955 a month. And her rent in a senior apartment is $1,400 a month. So she has relatives move in with her to share the rental costs. And we'll get to a little bit about how Proposition H could help somebody like that, but whether it will or not is going to be another problem. Now, you heard Mayor Smythe said that he didn't support Measure H, and neither did I. And the reason why I didn't support it was because it didn't include a spend plan. It didn't include what services would be provided, what the spend plan would be, where the money would be spent geographically. None of that was provided in the plan. And I've watched governments quite a bit. I like to visit City Hall every other Tuesday. And anytime something, a large bureaucracy is initiated and in place for 10 years, it never goes away. They'll just be coming back in 10 years and saying, I need more money. It's just going to get bigger. So when they talked about how they were going to determine how to spend this money, all along, this was no secret. They said it all the time. They were going to have a committee of 50 people to decide. Not only didn't Santa Clarita get involved when this was an initiative, there's nobody on that committee. I don't have the same faith in our supervisor that our mayor does. If I had that much faith in our supervisor, I would have expected that our supervisor would have put someone from Santa Clarita on that committee. But they didn't. So they've been getting together, and oddly enough, you might find that they have had 3 out of 4 meetings, and they can't reach any kind of a decision. Isn't that amazing? I mean, I was just flabbergasted when I heard that, right? It turns out that somebody said, let's form a bunch of subcommittees and we'll dig up some more evidence and figure out what to do. And they all voted that down. They didn't want to do that. So what they did is they voted to toss the quandary back to the county executives for more guidance of how to solve this problem. And so we'll just wait and see what happens. The committee has until May the 10th to recommend a 3-year budget to the Board of Supervisors. What happens if they don't have a budget by May the 10th? Who knows? You know? But I always get a kick out of whenever I hear something from Phil Ansel being said, because Phil was the guy that said, pass this. It's a quarter of a cent. It's just a small amount of money. I mean, it's going to be easy, right? In order to get the people back, he started having to come out and say, well, we'll feed you lunch if you stay all day this time, you know. So, but I noticed that some organizations are being proactive. In the article in the LA Times, it said that Joe Lyons, representing the San Gabriel Valley Coalition of Governments, is right there in the midst of this, but nobody from Santa Clarita. And he was intervening repeatedly to ask about how we can engage more other local governments, and no one wanted to talk about it because they all want him to give the money to me, right? I want the money. I mean, how many people here attended the debate between Katie Hill and the opponent of Measure H at the Signal debate? Well, at that point in time, Katie Hill didn't have a good idea of where the money was going, but her director, 2 days earlier than the debate, was interviewed by the LA Times. They expected all that money to go to PATH, their organization. Well, look at this. County officials are asking for $650 million by the third year. And that's twice what they're collecting per year. So someone's saying, well, how are we going to get that? And oddly enough, somebody from a shelter partnership, a gentleman named Schwartz, said, you know what, you were talking about giving me $87 million over 3 years. That's far too low. Give me more. I need more. Give it to me. But I love it. I love this guy from the Union Rescue Mission. Andy Bales, CEO, says, you know what, for all those people living on the streets today and those who are suffering, we could help them faster. You ought to give half of all the money to the people that are already providing shelter. Give the money to me. Everybody wants that money. And there's going to be a lot of discussion. So they talked about one gentleman, Richard here, who was the voice of reason, and he asked whether the county executives should be asked to revise their expectations in line with the resources. Well, that'd be a change of heart, you know. We talked about this a little bit ago. I hope you understood what Mayor Smythe said when he talked about, let's say, the money that comes in from the lottery. So you have a governmental agency, and it works the same way here in Santa Clarita. You have a governmental agency that funds something out of the general fund, which means they can spend that money on anything they want, okay? And then you say, oh, I'll go for this little tax. I'll so that I can add more money to this particular venture. Well, what happens is they take that money and then they say, well, we don't have to spend that general fund money on that anymore, and they take the money out of the general fund. So that's what we're talking about, offsetting. So that's why you never see an increase in the expenditures to something like that unless the amount of money you're collecting exceeds the amount they were spending before, because they're going to take that money and they're going to move it somewhere else. So that proposal was carried by a majority of the individuals. So what did Santa Clarita do? I mean, don't you think that we should do something? Well, City Committee talks Measure H. That was in the Signal on April the 14th, 2017. But it's really not a committee. You have to understand there's a difference between a city committee and a city ad hoc committee. A city ad hoc committee just means two people, a maximum of two council people have gone off on their own to talk about an issue. That holds about as much credence in the government as if two of us would go off and say, we have an ad hoc committee. We're going to talk about this, right? We're going to make all this happen. So in this particular case, the ad hoc committee was made up of Smythe and McLean. And by the way, back in February, the Signal said, Cameron did ask the city to form a committee. And if the city would have formed the committee, I don't care what you call it, then it would have fell under the Brown Act. But that's why they love ad hoc committees, because there's an exception in the Brown Act for ad hoc committees. And in an ad hoc committee, you don't have to notice the meeting. You don't have to tell anybody what happened at the meeting. There is no minutes of the meeting. And they can control who comes to the meeting. So when there was an article in the Signal about what happened at this meeting, well, guess what? Here's who came. The sheriff, Bridge to Home, Domestic Violence Center, PATH, Family Promise, probably Bridge to Home, okay? Because those were people that were invited. You, as an individual, would never know the meeting occurred. So you couldn't even go there to hear what happened. So I just thought we would have some quotes to remember. And I hope that everybody remembers these quotes at election time. which is coming in 2018. When Marcia McLean said, "You voted for it, you're paying for it, the money is coming back to this community." Want to bet? All right? We're going to remind her of that. Or how about Katie Hill, who didn't she just declare that she's going to run for something? She said, "We are committed to making sure you're getting that money. If you want it, I promise you, you'll be able to get it." Want to bet? All right. Some of the other quotes, though, one came from Lori Ander. It's our taxpayers locally are paying into that. They should see the benefit. The county is going to do well with Santa Clarita tax money. I think the county is going to do very well with Santa Clarita tax money. All right. And Mayor Smythe said this will be the first of many meetings and hopes to include faith groups in the conversation on homeless. He plans to host an open MeasureH workshop in the future. So when we see him again, let's ask him when that open meeting is going to take place so we know what they're doing. You know, I went out to the county website. Remember, I was talking about the lady who only had an income of $1,000 a month, basically, and had a $1,400 a month rent bill. Well, if you go out to the county website, they talk about all these wonderful things that they're going to do. And one of the things was prevention. So it just stuck on me. And I got these words right off of their website. It's combating homeless requires effective strategies to reduce the number of families and individuals who become homeless. Sounds good. To helping currently homeless families and individuals move into permanent housing. So they're talking about the ability to go ahead and help people that might become homeless. So a letter to the editor on April the 15th from Beverly talked about the fact of how expensive Santa Clarita has become for seniors living on a small fixed income. And she's talking about apartment dwellers in senior apartments seeing rent increases from $15 to $100 a month. And talked about one-bedroom apartments being somewhere between $800 and $1,600. Two bedrooms, $1,300 to $1,800. And supposed senior affordable housing ranging from $946 to $1,133. And there are a lot of people waiting for Section 8 housing, but they only issued 1,000 vouchers for that last year. You're going to start hearing about this if you come to council meetings, because Beverly's going to the next council meeting to talk about it, and so are other people. It's time when if we really are concerned about our residents here in Santa Clarita, we want our seniors to stay here, we're going to have to figure out a way to help them. So look, this is your money. You got to watch this carefully. We should have a voice in how it's spent. This is $7.8 million a year, okay? And you know what? This is another reason why I don't have a great amount of confidence in our county supervisor right now. This is the third initiative, the third. I think Cameron mentioned that a little bit about that as well, that we are going to be donating money to the rest of LA County. The first came as a parcel tax for parks. And the city of Santa Clarita didn't want to participate in that at all. It took us 4 months to get Beasley out here to tell us that we're fine, the money's going to be spent south of us. All right? That's the first one. The second one was MeasureM, which is supposed to alleviate traffic congestion. And what are we going to get up here? The only thing we were promised is the same lane on I-5 that we were promised the last 2 times that they asked us for money. And all that so they can get to the bottleneck of the I-5-14 interchange faster, right? So they talked about the plans for that money. It's down south. And I guarantee you, with the people on that committee, that money is going somewhere other than Santa Clarita. So we should have a voice in how it's spent. We should be asking the city council, why weren't you proactive? Why weren't you proactive in this initiative being placed on the ballot? Why weren't you proactive in asking the county to put someone on the committee? And just so that you can get a feel that I'm not way off base, I did look at the signal reader poll taken yesterday, and it said, do you think SCV residents will have a voice in how Measure H funds are spent? And 97% of the people answered no. So, you have a question? Well, give him a microphone, please.
Well, the mayor actually hit on the first part of it, because he said to get that money for the city, you have to have programs developed to do so. Well, they need to take the initiative, and we need to push the city council to develop programs that they can submit to get that money. But if they just take a cavalier attitude and say, well, it'll come back to us, it's not going to happen. Absolutely. You actually have to have a plan for it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. A plan is very important. You know, that's being an old project manager. Well, being a project manager, when I was working, we used to have this saying, you know, if you have a plan, it might happen. If you don't have a plan, it won't happen.